The autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Officer James Miller sat in his patrol car on Sater Street, a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs of Portland. It was just another Tuesday afternoon shift, and he had been parked near the local elementary school, keeping an eye on traffic as parents began picking up their children. James had been on the force for 12 years, and these routine traffic monitoring duties were as familiar to him as his morning coffee. He checked his watch, 2:45 p.m. The school would let out in 15 minutes, and the usual parade of minivans and SUVs would begin. As he filled out some paperwork from an earlier call, a silver Toyota Camry caught his attention. The car rolled through the stop sign at the intersection without even slowing down. James put down his pen and started the patrol car's engine. It wasn't just about the traffic violation. Something about the driver's behavior seemed off to him. The Camry was moving slightly under the speed limit, which was unusual for someone who had just run a stop sign. Most people who ignored traffic signs were in a hurry, but this driver seemed almost too careful now, as if trying not to draw attention. James flipped on his lights and watched as the Camry continued for another block before finally pulling over. Again, the delay was subtle but noticeable to his experienced eye. He radioed in the stop to dispatch, reading out the license plate number as he did so, standard procedure for every traffic stop. "Dispatch, this is Officer Miller. I'm conducting a traffic stop at Cedar and Oak. License plate number Charlie Romeo 7492 Alpha." As James stepped out of his patrol car, he followed the safety protocols that had become second nature over the years. He adjusted his body camera, made sure it was recording, and touched his holster, a habit that had saved lives before. The sun was high in the sky, creating a glare on the Camry's back window that made it difficult to see inside. Walking up to the vehicle, James noticed several things that made his police instincts tingle. The car had out-of-state plates from Idaho, but they looked new, too new for a car that was at least 5 years old. There was a small scratch near the trunk that had been touched up with paint that didn't quite match the rest of the silver body. As he got closer, he could see the driver was a woman, probably in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length brown hair. She was gripping the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white with tension. Most people were nervous during traffic stops, but her reaction seemed excessive for a simple moving violation. Then, as he reached the back door of the car, movement caught his eye. There was a child in the back seat, a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. She was sitting very still, but what struck James as odd was that she wasn't in a proper booster seat, which was required by law for children her age. The girl was wearing a pink dress that looked wrinkled and slightly dirty, as if she'd been wearing it for more than one day. Her hair was messy, and even through the window, James could tell she had been crying. Something about her appearance made his stomach knot up, the same feeling he got when things weren't adding up on a case. James took a deep breath and reminded himself not to jump to conclusions. In his years on the force, he had learned that appearances could be deceiving. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything he was seeing. But he had also learned to trust his instincts, and right now, they were screaming that something wasn't right. He tapped on the driver's window with 2 fingers, keeping his other hand free and maintaining a safe distance from the car. The window rolled down slowly, and the smell of fast food and something else, fear, perhaps, wafted out. "Good afternoon, ma'am," James said in his professional voice, the one he had practiced to sound both authoritative and non-threatening. "I'm Officer Miller with the Portland Police Department. Are you aware that you ran through a stop sign back there at Cedar and Maple?" As he waited for her response, James positioned himself so he could keep both the woman and the child in his peripheral vision. The girl in the back seat caught his eye for just a moment, and what he saw in that brief glance made his face turn pale. In all his years on the force, he had never expected a routine traffic stop to turn into something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The moment Officer James Miller looked into the young girl's eyes, his world seemed to stop spinning. Those eyes, he knew them better than his own reflection. They were the same hazel eyes that had looked up at him every morning for 6 years, the same eyes he saw in the hundreds of missing person posters that now covered half the state. The woman in the driver's seat was fumbling through her purse, her hands shaking as she searched for her license. "I'm so sorry, officer," she said, her voice wavering. "I know I should have stopped. We're just running late for a doctor's appointment." But James barely heard her words. His mind was racing through memories of 3 months ago, the last time he had seen his daughter Sarah. It had been a normal Saturday morning at the park. He had looked down to answer a text from his wife, and when he looked up again, Sarah was gone. Just gone, as if she had vanished into thin air. The girl in the back seat wasn't Sarah. You could see that now. This child had darker hair and was probably a year younger, but something about her fearful expression and the way she kept glancing at the driver set off every alarm in his trained mind. "Ma'am, could you please turn off the engine?" James asked, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline now pumping through his veins. He noticed how the woman's hands trembled as she pulled the key from the ignition. The child in the back seat shifted slightly, and James saw something that made his blood run cold. There were marks on her wrists, the kind that come from restraints. They were partially hidden by the long sleeves of her pink dress, but his trained eye caught the telltale signs of rope burns. "Can I see your license and registration, please?" James asked, maintaining his professional demeanor while his mind raced through police protocols. He needed to keep them both calm while he figured out what was really happening here. The woman handed over a driver's license that identified her as Monica Wheeler from Boise, Idaho. James studied the photo. It matched her face, but something about the license felt off. After 12 years on the force, he had developed an almost sixth sense about fake IDs. "And the registration?" he prompted when she didn't offer it. "Oh, right," Monica said, reaching for the glove compartment. "This is actually my friend's car. I'm borrowing it while mine's in the shop." James watched as she rifled through papers, noting how her explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. He shifted his position slightly to maintain a clear view of both occupants while simultaneously pressing the silent alarm button on his radio, a signal to dispatch that he needed immediate backup without alerting the suspects. "Emma, honey, sit still," Monica called to the back seat, her voice carrying a slight edge that didn't match the sweet words. The girl flinched at the command. It was subtle, but James caught it. In that moment, he also noticed that the child's shoes didn't match. One was a purple sneaker, the other a black Mary Jane. What mother would let her child leave the house like that? James glanced at the registration Monica finally handed him. The car was registered to a Robert Chen in Seattle, not matching her story about borrowing it from a friend in Boise. Each detail added another red flag to an already suspicious situation. "Emma," James said gently, addressing the child directly. "How are you doing back there?" Before the girl could answer, Monica jumped in. "She's just tired, officer. Like I said, we're running late for her doctor's appointment." James noticed how the girl's eyes widened slightly at the name Emma, as if she wasn't used to responding to it. He had seen that same confusion in trafficking victims before, when they were being called by false names. His mind flashed back to the missing persons reports he had reviewed that morning. There had been one about a 6-year-old girl named Lily Anderson who had disappeared from her front yard in Eugene 2 days ago. The description matched. Brown hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing a pink dress. As these thoughts raced through his mind, James maintained his composed exterior. He could hear distant sirens. Backup was on the way. His job now was to keep both the woman and the child calm for just a few more minutes. Looking at the frightened girl in the back seat, James made a silent promise. Unlike that terrible day 3 months ago with Sarah, this time he would not fail. This time, he would make sure a family didn't have to experience the same nightmare he lived with every day. Officer James Miller's training kicked in as he processed the situation before him. Standing beside the silver Camry, he kept his voice calm and professional while his mind worked through his next steps. The woman who called herself Monica Wheeler was becoming increasingly agitated, her fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. "Ma'am, could you tell me the name of the doctor you're going to see?" James asked, testing her story while keeping one eye on the child in the back seat. Monica's hesitation was brief but noticeable. "Dr. Anderson at the children's clinic," she said, but her voice hitched slightly on the name. James knew every pediatrician's office in the area. It was part of his beat. There was no Dr. Anderson at the children's clinic. Another red flag. The girl in the back seat, the one Monica had called Emma, had pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself as small as possible. It was a defensive posture James had seen too many times in traumatized children. Her blue eyes darted between Monica and the window, like a trapped animal looking for escape. "Emma," James said softly, "how long have you been feeling sick?" Before the child could answer, Monica cut in sharply. "She has a sore throat. Had it for days. Now, "Officer, I really need to get her to that appointment." James noticed how the girl flinched at Monica's tone. He also saw something else, a small stuffed rabbit partially hidden under the back seat. It was dirty and worn, with one ear missing, but he recognized it immediately. It was identical to the one in the Amber Alert photo of Lily Anderson. "Would you mind stepping out of the vehicle for a moment?" James asked Monica, his hand casually resting near his holster. "I just need to verify a few things." Monica's face paled. "Is that really necessary? We're already late, and Emma needs her medicine." "It won't take long," James assured her, but his tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Through his earpiece, he could hear dispatch confirming that backup was less than 2 minutes away. As Monica reluctantly opened her door, James noticed her glance at her purse on the passenger seat. His instincts told him there might be a weapon inside. He positioned himself to block any attempt she might make to reach for it. "Please step to the rear of the vehicle," he instructed, guiding her away from both the driver's door and the child. Once Monica was at the back of the car, James risked a quick glance through the rear window. The girl was watching them intently now, her eyes wide with fear, but also something else, hope. "Can you tell me your current address in Boise?" James asked Monica, keeping her engaged while listening for the approaching sirens. 1242 Maple Street, she answered quickly, too quickly. "And how long have you lived there?" 3 years. "That's interesting," James said, maintaining his professional tone, "because I noticed your license was just issued 2 months ago, but it lists a different address." Monica's demeanor changed instantly. The nervous energy transformed into something harder, more dangerous. Her eyes darted to the surrounding streets, calculating. James could see the exact moment she decided to run, but he was ready. As Monica tried to bolt toward the front of the car, James smoothly stepped in her path. "Ma'am, please remain where you are," he said firmly, reaching for his handcuffs. The sound of sirens grew louder, and 2 police cruisers appeared at both ends of the street. Monica's shoulders slumped in defeat. Through the car window, James saw the girl's expression change as she watched Monica being handcuffed. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but these weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. A female officer, Sarah Martinez, emerged from one of the backup units and immediately went to the back door of the Camry. James could hear her gentle voice talking to the child as she opened the door. "Hi, sweetheart," Officer Martinez said softly. "Can you tell me your real name?" The girl glanced fearfully at Monica, who was now secured in handcuffs, before whispering something that confirmed James's suspicions. "Lily," she said quietly. "My name is Lily Anderson." As Officer Martinez carefully helped Lily out of the car, James noticed something fall from the girl's pocket, a crumpled piece of paper. He picked it up and carefully unfolded it. What he saw made his heart stop. It was a missing person flyer, worn and dirty, but the face was clear. It showed a smiling 6-year-old girl with blonde hair and bright eyes. It was a picture of his daughter Sarah. James's hands trembled as he held the missing person flyer of Sarah. Questions raced through his mind as he watched Officer Martinez lead Lily toward the safety of her patrol car. Why did Lily have this flyer? What connection could there be between his daughter's disappearance and this situation? Back at his patrol car, James ran Monica Wheeler's information through the police database. His screen lit up with multiple alerts. The license she had handed him was indeed fake, expertly crafted, but fake nonetheless. Her real name was Monica Blackwood, and she had a history of child-related crimes in 3 different states. "Dispatch, I need an immediate detective response to my location." James spoke into his radio, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Possible connection to multiple kidnapping cases, including," he paused for a moment, steadying himself, "including the Sarah Miller case." Detective Lisa Chen arrived within minutes, her unmarked car pulling up quietly beside the growing number of police vehicles. She had been the lead investigator on Sarah's case, and James had spent countless hours working with her over the past 3 months. "Talk to me, James," Lisa said as she approached, her experienced eyes taking in the scene. James briefed her quickly about finding Lily Anderson and the discovery of Sarah's flyer. Lisa's expression grew more serious with each detail. "We need to question her now," Lisa said, looking toward the patrol car where Monica sat handcuffed in the back seat. "But James, I want you to sit this one out. You're too close to this." James wanted to protest, but he knew she was right. His hands were still shaking from finding the flyer, and his police training told him he was too emotionally involved to conduct an effective interrogation. Instead, he turned his attention to Lily, who was now wrapped in a shock blanket in Officer Martinez's car. The girl seemed calmer now, though her eyes still darted around nervously. James approached slowly, making sure she could see him coming. "Hi, Lily," he said gently, crouching down beside the open car door. "I'm Officer James. Can you tell me about that paper you had? The one with the picture?" Lily clutched the shock blanket tighter around her shoulders. "She showed it to me," she whispered. "The lady. She said if I tried to run away, I'd disappear forever like that girl." James felt his heart constrict, but he kept his voice steady. "Did she tell you anything else about the girl in the picture?" Lily nodded slowly. "She said she knew where lots of kids were. She said." The girl's voice broke off, tears welling in her eyes. Officer Martinez stepped in smoothly. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now. Would you like some water?" While Martinez attended to Lily, James walked over to where Detective Chen was emerging from her initial interview with Monica. The detective's face was grim but determined. "She's part of a larger operation, James," Lisa said quietly. "She's asking for a deal in exchange for information." James felt his pulse quicken. "About Sarah?" Lisa held up a hand. "Don't get ahead of yourself. She claims to have information about multiple missing children, but we need to verify everything. I've already called in the FBI's trafficking task force." Around them, the crime scene unit was processing the silver Camry. They had found a hidden compartment in the trunk containing multiple sets of children's clothes, fake IDs, and a laptop. The computer would be sent to the forensics lab for analysis. James watched as a social worker arrived to take care of Lily until her parents could arrive from Eugene. The girl was starting to show signs of exhaustion, her small body slumping in the car seat. "We need to search her last known addresses," James said, his detective instincts pushing through his emotional turmoil. "She must have kept records somewhere." "Already on it," Lisa confirmed. "We've got teams heading to 3 locations now. But James..." She put a hand on his arm. "You need to prepare yourself. Whatever we find..." "I know," he interrupted. "But she's alive, Lisa. I can feel it. And now we have our first real lead in months." As if to emphasize his point, one of the crime scene technicians called out from the car. They had found a phone hidden in the vehicle's air vent, its screen locked but potentially holding crucial evidence. James looked at the gathering storm clouds above. Somewhere out there, Sarah was waiting to be found. And for the first time in 3 months, he had more than just hope to hold on to. He had a trail to follow, and he wouldn't stop until it led him to his daughter. Detective Chen's phone buzzed with an incoming message. "The FBI team will be here in 20 minutes, she said. "This case just got a lot bigger than a traffic stop, James." The FBI's mobile command center hummed with activity as Special Agent Rachel Torres led the questioning of Lily Anderson. The girl sat in a child-friendly interview room, clutching her dirty stuffed rabbit while a child psychologist sat nearby. Through the observation window, James watched intently, hoping for any clue that might lead to Sarah. "Can you tell me about the house where they kept you, Lily?" Agent Torres asked gently. "Was it big or small?" Lily's small fingers played with her rabbit's remaining ear. "It was big and old. There were other kids there too, but they made us stay in different rooms." James felt his heart race. Other children. Could Sarah be among them? "The windows had bars," Lily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "And there was a big tree outside with a swing, but we weren't allowed to use it." Detective Chen was rapidly cross-referencing Lily's description with known properties connected to Monica Blackwood. 3 locations matched the partial description: an abandoned farmhouse outside Portland, a foreclosed property in Vancouver, and a remote cabin near Mount Hood. "Do you remember what color the house was?" Torres asked. "Green," Lily said. "Dark green with white things on the corners." "Trim," James muttered. "She's describing the farmhouse on Old Mill Road." Lisa Chen was already on her phone, coordinating with tactical teams. The farmhouse had been on their radar before, but they'd never had probable cause for a search warrant. Now they did. Meanwhile, the forensics team had managed to unlock the phone found in Monica's car. Text messages revealed communications with multiple contacts, all using coded language that suggested an organized trafficking operation. One message caught James's eye. Package S still secure. Buyer arranged for Thursday. Today was Tuesday. If S stood for Sarah, they might have just hours to find her. Lyly, Agent Torrey said carefully, "Did you ever hear them talk about a girl named Sarah?" The child's eyes widened with recognition. The girl from the picture? They said she was special. They kept her in the attic room because she tried to run away. James had to step away from the observation window. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely keep his balance. Lissa followed him into the hallway. "We're going to find her, James," she said firmly. "But you need to keep it together. We can't afford any mistakes now." The tactical teams were already gearing up. The farmhouse was 30 minutes away, nestled in a remote area with poor cell coverage. They would need to move carefully. Other children might be at risk. Back in the interview room, Lily was drawing a rough map of the house's interior. Her small hands moved across the paper with surprising precision for a 6-year-old, marking doors, stairs, and windows. "The scary room is here," she said, pointing to a space she'd drawn in the far corner of the attic. "That's where they put kids who don't behave." Agent Torrey shared a meaningful look with the observers through the window. They'd had enough. It was time to move. James watched as Lily's parents arrived at the command center, their tearful reunion a bitter reminder of what he had lost, and what he hoped to regain. The Andersons held their daughter close, whispering words of love and relief. "Officer Miller?" Lily called out suddenly, breaking away from her parents. She ran to him, still clutching her rabbit. "I heard them say something about Thursday. They're taking kids away on Thursday." James knelt down to her level. "Thank you, Lily. You're very brave." The tactical team's commander, Captain Reynolds, appeared in the doorway. "We're ready to move. Weather's turning bad. We need to go now if we want to maintain the element of surprise." James checked his watch. 4:45 p.m. Darkness would be falling soon, and storm clouds were gathering. The forecast called for heavy rain. "Detective Chen will coordinate from here," Reynolds continued. "Miller, you're with my team, but you stay in the second vehicle. No arguments." James nodded, accepting the conditions. He was too close to finding Sarah to risk letting his emotions jeopardize the operation. As they prepared to leave, Lily tugged at his sleeve one last time. "The girl in the picture," she said quietly. "She told me to be brave. She said her daddy would find us because he never gives up." James felt tears threatening to fall but held them back. "She was right," he said softly. "I never gave up." The tactical team moved out into the gathering storm, their vehicles disappearing into the darkening afternoon. Somewhere ahead lay the green farmhouse with white trim, and inside, James prayed, was the daughter he had been searching for these past 3 months. The convoy of unmarked police vehicles moved silently through the winding country roads, their lights off to avoid detection. Rain had started to fall, creating a curtain of water that reduced visibility. James sat in the second vehicle, his tactical vest feeling heavier than usual, his heart pounding with each mile that brought them closer to the farmhouse. Through their earpieces came Captain Reynolds' calm voice. "All units, maintain radio silence. 2 minutes to target." The green farmhouse emerged from the gloom, its white trim barely visible in the fading light. No vehicles were visible in the driveway, but tire tracks in the mud suggested recent activity. The tactical team's intelligence suggested at least 3 suspects inside, possibly armed. "Alpha team, take the front," Reynolds whispered. "Bravo team, cover the rear. Charlie team, secure the perimeter. Remember, possible multiple children inside. Extreme caution." James watched from his position as the teams moved into place. The rain provided cover for their approach, muffling their footsteps in the wet grass. Through his binoculars, he could see movement behind one of the upper windows, a shadow passing briefly across a gap in the curtains. "Movement, second floor, east side," he reported quietly into his radio. The response teams froze in position, waiting for Reynolds' signal. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by a low rumble of thunder. The storm was getting closer. "Execute," Reynolds commanded. The front door burst open under the battering ram's force. "Police, search warrant." Multiple voices shouted as teams flooded into the house from both entrances. Chaos erupted inside. Shouts and running footsteps could be heard even through the rain. James maintained his position as ordered, though every fiber of his being screamed to run inside. Suspect down in the kitchen, came a call over the radio, one in custody. Second suspect attempting to flee through back window. James saw a figure leap from the first floor window and sprint toward the woods. Without hesitation, he broke from his position and gave chase. The suspect was fast, but James was driven by something stronger than mere duty. Through the rain and mud they ran, until James tackled the suspect into a clearing. It was a man he recognized from the case files, Robert Chen, the real owner of the silver Camry. "Where is she?" James demanded as he secured the handcuffs. "Where's Sarah?" Chen just laughed, a sound that was cut short as another roll of thunder crashed overhead. Third suspect in custody on second floor. The radio crackled. Beginning room-by-room search. Multiple children located, all alive. James handed Chen off to another officer and ran back to the house, no longer able to stay away. He entered through the back door, passing the kitchen where one suspect lay subdued, and followed the sounds of activity upstairs. Clear, came calls from various rooms. 2 children secure in this room, 3 more here, but no Sarah. James remembered Lily's words about the attic. He found the stairs leading up and took them 2 at a time, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The attic was massive, divided into smaller spaces by makeshift walls. "Police," he called out. "Is anyone here?" A muffled sound came from the far corner, the scary room Lily had drawn on her map. James moved toward it, his heart in his throat. The door was locked with a padlock, but a swift strike with a Halligan tool broke it open. The room was dark, but in his flashlight beam, he saw her. Sarah sat in the corner, thin and pale but alive. Her eyes squinted against the light. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. James rushed forward, gathering his daughter in his arms. She felt so small, so fragile, but she was alive. She was alive. "I knew you'd find me," Sarah whispered into his shoulder. "I told the other kids you'd never stop looking." Medical teams were already ascending the stairs as James carried Sarah down. She refused to let go of him, her small hands gripping his tactical vest. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass. Multiple police vehicles now surrounded the farmhouse, their lights painting the rain in red and blue. Ambulances stood ready to transport the rescued children to hospitals for evaluation. Detective Chen met them at the bottom of the stairs, tears in her usually stoic eyes. "We found 9 children," she reported. "All alive. All on missing persons lists from 3 states. Sarah looked up at James, her eyes tired but clear. "Can we go home now, Daddy?" James held his daughter closer, feeling her heart beating against his chest. After 3 months of searching, after all the dead ends and sleepless nights, after nearly losing hope, he could finally answer, "Yes, baby. We're going home." The emergency room at Portland Children's Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as medical teams evaluated the 9 rescued children. Sarah Miller sat on an examination bed, still holding tightly to her father's hand while Dr. Rodriguez performed her checkup. James hadn't left her side since the rescue, and hospital staff had given up trying to make him wait outside. "Your daughter is dehydrated and underweight," Dr. Rodriguez explained quietly to James. Sarah had lost 12 pounds during her captivity, but her vital signs were stable. The physical bruises would heal faster than the emotional ones, the doctor warned. A child psychiatrist would be meeting with her soon. Down the hall, other reunions were taking place. Parents who had been notified were arriving from various states, their cries of joy and relief echoing through the corridors. FBI agents moved from room to room, gently gathering preliminary statements from the children who were ready to talk. Detective Chen appeared in the doorway of Sarah's room, her face showing both exhaustion and triumph. "James," she said softly, "we need to talk." Sarah's grip on her father's hand tightened. "Don't go," she whispered. "I'm not leaving," James assured her. "Detective Chen can talk to us here." Lisa pulled up a chair and sat down, keeping her voice gentle for Sarah's benefit. "The suspects are talking. Monica Blackwood has agreed to give us everything. Names, locations, contacts. This goes deeper than we imagined." "How deep?" James asked, feeling Sarah lean against him. "International," Lisa replied. They were part of a larger trafficking network. The farmhouse was just one stop. They had buyers lined up in multiple countries. Sarah trembled slightly, and James wrapped an arm around her. "It's over now," he said firmly. "They can't hurt anyone else." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. It was Lily Anderson and her parents, come to check on Sarah before heading home to Eugene. Lily carried her one-eared rabbit. "This is for you," Lily said, holding out the stuffed animal to Sarah. "You told me he helps with bad dreams." Sarah reached out tentatively and took the rabbit. "Thank you," she whispered, the first words she'd spoken to anyone besides her father since the rescue. The two girls shared a look that spoke volumes, understanding that only they could truly comprehend. The Andersons quietly thanked James again before leaving for home, where they hoped to help their daughter begin healing. A social worker named Maria Santos entered next, carrying a tablet. "Sarah," she said warmly, "would you feel up to helping us? Some of the younger children are scared, and they keep asking for you. They say you took care of them." James looked at his daughter with pride and concern. Even in captivity, she had thought of others. Sarah nodded slowly. "I told them stories," she explained, her voice growing slightly stronger, about a brave police officer who never gave up looking for his little girl, about how the good guys always win in the end. James had to turn away for a moment to wipe his eyes. When he turned back, Sarah was sitting a little straighter. "Can I see them?" she asked. "Just for a minute?" The social worker looked to Dr. Rodriguez, who nodded approval. A short visit would be fine. They're just down the hall. James walked with Sarah to a larger room where 3 of the younger children were being treated. Their faces lit up when they saw her. One little boy, no more than 4, reached out his arms. "Sarah told the best stories," he told his mother, who held him close. "She said her daddy was coming for all of us." The parents in the room looked at James with tears in their eyes, understanding now who he was. One father stepped forward and silently shook his hand, unable to speak through his emotion. A fresh team of FBI agents arrived to continue the investigation. They would need fuller statements eventually, but for now, they understood the children needed rest and time with their families. As the evening wore on, Sarah finally fell asleep in her hospital bed, clutching Lily's rabbit. James sat watching her breathe, memorizing every detail of her face as if she might disappear again if he looked away. Detective Chen stopped by one last time before heading back to the station. "The district attorney is filing charges tomorrow morning," she said. "With the evidence we gathered and Monica's cooperation, they won't see freedom again." James nodded, still watching Sarah sleep. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for never giving up on this case." Lisa smiled softly. "You taught us all something about never losing hope, James. Get some rest. Tomorrow begins the long road of healing." As night fell over Portland, 9 families held their children close, their worlds finally complete again. And in room 412, Officer James Miller kept his vigil, grateful for second chances and the power of a father's love. 6 months had passed since the dramatic rescue at the farmhouse. The Portland Police Department's conference room was packed with families, officers, and media as Police Chief Roberts stepped up to the podium. Behind him sat James and Sarah Miller, along with the other rescued children and their families. "Today, we're here to honor not just heroic police work, but the incredible strength of these young survivors," Chief Roberts began. "Thanks to their bravery and cooperation, an international trafficking ring has—" Sarah, now 7 years old and restored to health, sat proudly beside her father. She wore her favorite blue dress and held Lily's one-eared rabbit, which had become her constant companion. The physical traces of her ordeal had faded, though she still attended weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Carter, who specialized in helping traumatized children. Officer James Miller's dedication to finding his daughter led to not only her rescue, but the salvation of 8 other children, the chief continued. His actions remind us why we wear this badge. In the audience, Detective Lisa Chen watched with satisfaction. The case had consumed her life for months, but the results had been worth every sleepless night. Monica Blackwood's cooperation had proven invaluable, leading to raids in 6 countries and the rescue of 27 more children. James was called to the podium to receive a commendation, but he insisted that Sarah accompany him. As they stood together, he lifted her so she could reach the microphone. "I want to tell all the other kids who are still lost," Sarah said clearly, her voice carrying through the room. "Don't give up. There are brave people looking for you, and they won't stop until they find you." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Among the audience sat Lily Anderson and her family, who had driven up from Eugene for the ceremony. Lily and Sarah had become close friends, bonded by their shared experience and triumph over it. After the ceremony, the families gathered for a more private celebration. The children, who once huddled in fear in dark rooms, now played together under bright lights, their laughter a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. "We're starting a support group," Mrs. Anderson told James. "For the parents and children. Sarah's stories about you gave these kids hope. Now they want to help give hope to others." James watched as Sarah showed some younger children how to make paper airplanes. She still had nightmares sometimes, still slept with her door open and a nightlight on, but each day brought more of her old spirit back. Detective Chen joined them, carrying files. "The last trial ended today," she reported. "Robert Chen got life without parole. They all did. Those kids will never have to testify." The news rippled through the gathering, bringing sighs of relief from parents who had dreaded the prospect of their children facing their captors in court. Sarah came running up to her father. "Daddy, can we go to the park? The real park?" James smiled, remembering how long it had taken before Sarah felt safe enough to even ask about going to a park again. "Of course we can, sweetheart." As families began to leave, James noticed Sarah giving Lily's rabbit back to her. "You need him more than me now," Sarah said to her friend. "I got my daddy to keep the bad dreams away." The two girls hugged, promising to video chat later that week. Their friendship had become a source of healing for both of them. Outside the police station, reporters were waiting, but Chief Roberts had arranged for the families to exit through a private entrance. As James buckled Sarah into her car seat, she asked a question that had been on her mind. "Daddy, are you still going to be a police officer?" "Yes," he answered honestly, "but I'm going to work in a special unit now, helping find other missing children." Sarah thought about this for a moment. "Good," she said finally, "because you're really good at finding people." As they drove toward the park, James glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughter. She was looking out the window, pointing out dogs and flowers like any other 7-year-old. But he knew she carried a wisdom beyond her years now, a strength that amazed him daily. The case had changed them both. James had been promoted to lead a new task force dedicated to missing children cases, while Sarah had started speaking to groups of police officers, sharing her story to help them understand what missing children go through. At the park, Sarah ran to the swings, her favorite spot. James pushed her higher and higher as she laughed, her voice carrying on the wind. They had both learned that while evil existed in the world, it could be defeated by love, determination, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his child. "Higher, Daddy," Sarah called out, reaching for the sky, no longer afraid to soar.